All right, so our panel today is called Game Changers. And so I don't know that women necessarily wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to be a game changer. But nonetheless, I think sometimes we find ourselves in our careers in places that maybe we didn't even imagine when we started. So what we're going to have today is an informal panel to really talk almost like The View, kind of get a conversation started about milestones and key moments as these women have developed along the way in their careers. Success for women in male-dominated industries takes hard work. Research has shown that women have to work 10 times harder than their male counterparts to get noticed in jobs. This invariably has an effect on the quality of life of the families, of women, of men, of all of us. Being a success in an industry for women requires a lot of juggling, especially if a woman has children and a husband to look after, a partner. Our society still seems to be skewed towards men in terms of career advancement. And women suffer penalties in their jobs for absence due to childbearing and rearing that men don't seem to have the same challenge. It seems that women do the exact same job as men but still get paid up to 40% less. So all of these things, we are continuing to make incremental gains, but we're not quite yet where we need to be yet. So today we'll talk to several women about their careers. You're going to hear from a military veteran, a former elected official, an entrepreneur, and a corporate executive. So we've got a wonderful mix of women to hear their views about milestones in their lives and how really looking back, they've made a difference in terms of their careers. Let me start just by brief introductions, then we'll get right into the discussion here. I hope, you see, I think I might stand over here, if that's okay, Deborah? I hope you all can see over here. I'm gonna try to move around a little bit. Let me start by introducing you to Cynthia Curiel. Cynthia is a Sector Vice President for Communications for Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems, a premier provider of manned and unmanned aircraft, space systems, and advanced technologies critical to our nation's security. Northrop Grumman is a huge employer in our region, and Cynthia is really in charge of the message for that company in this entire area. She has many duties, and she'll talk about some of those with us today, but let me just introduce Cynthia Curiel. Next, I want to introduce Judy Jones Cohn. The Judith Jones Cohn Automotive Group was started in 1972 by Judy's late husband, Lou, when he purchased Toyota of Oceanside, which is now called Toyota Carlsbad. Toyota Carlsbad was located in Car Country Carlsbad in 1977, and Judy is an entrepreneur who opened Lexus of Escondido and designed a diverse venue there that caters to many. I know we've driven by it when we've seen it on the freeway, and I know many of us have car services there. I've talked to Judy before we got up here this morning, and she has a vision for so much for that facility, and we'll talk a little bit about that. She clearly is operating in an industry that's primarily with men, and so we're eager to hear about Judy and how she's succeeded. Next up, Pam, and Judy, Judy's here in the red for those of you who can't see. Thanks. Next up is Pam Slater Price, and for 2 decades as a county supervisor, Pam Slater Price took a common sense approach to government that had made her a respected woman in regional politics. Pam began her public service career in the late 1980s in Encinitas when she served as councilwoman and mayor. She was first elected to the San Diego County Board of Supervisors in 1992, and she very recently retired in January of 2013, but she's not really retired at all because she's still working harder than ever. We're delighted that Pam's here, so welcome, Pam. And Leah Sutton is here. Leah is a journalist, as you heard. Her entrance into journalism was a bit unconventional, to say the least, because prior to stepping in front of the camera, much of Leah's life was spent in uniform, including a flight suit. So how many here have flown an F-18? Can we have a show of hands? Oh, there's one, just Leah. Leah served as a Navy fighter pilot. Her experience included flying F-18s in Iraq and Afghanistan, and she moved on from flying and thrived as a U.S. Navy intelligence officer during Operation Enduring Freedom. During her time in Afghanistan, she was embedded with a Navy SEAL unit conducting international intelligence operations. And having served in the Navy, Leah, I think, has a special insight into the lives and concerns of our U.S. military and their families. So what a wonderful and diverse panel. Welcome, Leah. So I want to make sure everyone over here can see me, so I'm going to step back a little bit if that's okay. All right. I thought what we could do to start with, to get the conversation flowing, is we heard from Wilma about her milestones in her life, and I think when we all talk about where we are, part of our story is where we've been. to think back about those key things in your life that brought you here today, that maybe along the way there was a mentor, someone who took time with you, someone who opened a door for you in a way that really led to future success. So what I thought we could do to start with is to have each of our panelists talk for just a minute about those key milestones in their life that really, I think, led to where they are today. So let's start with Judy, if we could. Judy, can we start with you? And if you want to sit there, that's fine. Or if you want to stand up, it's up to you. Let's go over here.
Good morning. There are 3 things I learned when I suddenly became a car dealer. 1, surround yourself with knowledgeable people. 2, work hard. 3, let your future unfold. My lesson started when my late husband Lou Jones battled cancer for 2.5 years. As he was nearing death, his last words to me were, "I have but one regret, and it is that I can't spend more time with you." Those words indicated that my roles as wife and advertising executive were coming to an end, and the new titles of widow and car dealer would now be assigned to my name. Upon his death 16 years ago, I inherited Toyota Carlsbad and Lexus Carlsbad. As loving as his words were, they were not as influential as words he gave me from his favorite poem. My husband's favorite poem was this: "Happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase it, the more it will elude you. But if you turn your attention to other things, it comes and softly sits on your shoulder." The poem says, don't chase your goals. Do today's responsibilities well. Focus on today so you can look forward to tomorrow. As a car dealer, the most important thing I did was surround myself with a team of experts that knew what I didn't. And then I attended the National Automobile Dealer Academy to learn as much as I could. An attorney, a financial advisor, a seasoned businessman, and a company chaplain made up my team of external consultants. Internally, I recognized and supported the talent already in place. With this organizational structure and the prayers for wisdom to do the right thing, we have grown from 250 employees to over 500, and with the addition of Lexus Escondido, we've grown from 2 automotive agencies to 3. Also, we have maintained a healthy and stable organization in this challenging economy. I may be among a small group of women in an industry that employs more men than women, but this is not a male-dominated industry. The automotive industry is an opportunity-dominated industry for both men and women. With the power of hardworking men and women in my life, we will continue to improve the automotive sales and service process. After all, my team is the butterfly that comes and sits softly on my shoulder. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. That's great. Thank you. Judy was sharing with me, and maybe every car dealer in America will eventually figure this out. She's figured out that there's a great value in being able to drop off your car and actually getting your nails done while the car is being serviced at the same location. Fantastic. I thought that was great. So let's talk next with Cynthia and hear about, Cynthia, every day you work in corporate America. You deal with top-level executives, not just from your company, but I'm sure with others too, and you're managing the message and they're looking to you. So can you tell us about sort of your path leading to Northrop Grumman?
Sure. I think there's been a really common theme that we've heard through the week. I was fortunate to attend an event that the San Diego North Chamber had the other night, and we heard from Tina Mickelson. And I felt like her message was so common to what probably many of us have experienced, which is we set goals out in the future, we identify what we want to do, and then we work on a path to get there. And we sometimes lose sight of the here and now. And what ends up happening is the here and now ends up ultimately getting you where you belong. So when I started my career, it was 1985. I had graduated from UCSD with a liberal arts degree and not a very bustling economy for people with liberal arts degrees. And I wanted to take a path either to be a college professor or possibly a lawyer or a public relations professional. The first two required advanced degrees, money for which I did not have. So I talked to the two most important mentors at the time in my life, my mom and my dad, and one of my brothers who was a college professor and the other brother who was an entrepreneur. And they advised that I needed to get a job that would pay for me to go to graduate school if that's what I wanted to do. So I was offered opportunities with an advertising agency and a PR agency, neither of which were going to give me much money to save. And then my dad suggested something that just didn't seem all that cool to me, which was to be a technical editor on a ground launch cruise missile program for a company called General Dynamics. And he said, it's a good company with good benefits and it'll pay well. You can go to graduate school, don't be stupid. So that's what I did. Now I anticipated that I would do that for a couple of years and then find something else to do. And I never anticipated that what that would do would lead to a career in communications as a PR professional, getting to do something that I love to do every day because I learned to love what I was doing at the time. And it was an amazing opportunity. I fell in love with the myopia of engineers. I fell in love with the passion that they had for the mission. I fell in love with the technology, and I fell in love with the customers that we served. And it just turned into a career that I've been doing now for 28 years. I took a slight right turn in the life sciences, no offense to those of you in the room, in the life sciences, but the myopia of biologists was not quite the same for me. So I went back to aerospace. So I think that it's really important. My message is always that you have to love what you do so that you can eventually do what you love.
Isn't that true? And I also think that it's a good example of how it's not really the destination at the start, it's the path, it's the journey. Because you really never know where it's going to lead you. I think about your path, Pam. You've had such an amazing career and interesting experiences really in a male-dominated world. I remember when I was in high school, I went for a field trip to Washington, D.C., and I went to the U.S. Congress and looked down, and there were just a handful of women who were elected congressmen from around the United States. And I thought, we need more women elected officials. But it starts on a local level, and that's really what your career has been about, Pam. So can you talk about your path?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, everything that I did leading up to my career in politics contributed to being able to do a good job in politics. And the main thing that drove me into it was not starting out as many men do, I know, in an early stage of my life saying, I want to end up being an elected official. Far from it. I never wanted to be an elected official. And I ended up there because I got so disgusted with how I saw things being run. And when my daughter was 8 years old, we had incorporated a new city, and I decided, you know what, I don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. People were asking me if I would step forward for the second race in the city of Encinitas. I was somewhat reluctant to do so because my husband traveled as an engineer with Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and I had this 8-year-old child, and I was also a teacher, and I thought, what more else can I put on my plate? Well, I found out I could put on another job. And I got elected, and I got elected by just being exactly who I was. I would go out to speak, and I would talk about what was important to me. What was important to me was quality of life, slow growth in our city, not to let it get overdeveloped. That's the reason it incorporated away from the county of San Diego, which, by the way, we hated. And so what was important to me was to keep the values, education, good schools for kids, safe streets, a compatible community, people that like to do what they were doing, and people living together peacefully and in harmony. So that was my message, and I won. And I was considered a very dark horse, and I ended up winning with the most votes over 2 incumbents. So again, you know, you don't need to listen to all the packages that more or less what our other speakers have said. You can define what you want and you can define where you want to go. And the greatest strength you have is who you already are. If you stay true to who you already are, and you give the message out, your message will be heard and it will resonate with people. So from then, in 4 years hence from there, the supervisor for our area, Susan Golding, was leaving to run for mayor. And I was encouraged to run for the post of supervisor. I was a little bit intimidated, thinking, gee, this is, I have 60,000 now, I have over 600,000 constituents, I don't know how to run a big county race and so forth, but I thought, you know what, go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You lose the race. Who cares? So I decided to go for it, and I did the community building approach again, where I went out to all the communities and got to meet with them and found out what was important to them and spoke to them. And I ended up coming out of a field of 6, 1,800 votes behind the favored candidate, who was on the San Diego City Council, also a woman though. And then in the general election in the fall, I ended up winning the seat, and I became the 3rd woman elected in the history of the county of 150 years to the Board of Supervisors. By the way, my colleague at the time, Diane Jacob, also was elected, so she and I were, I guess we were 3.5 each, or something like that, because we were 3 and 4 elected to the Women Board of Supervisors, only the women ever. And the only time 2 women have ever served on the Board of Supervisors together was during the 20 years that she and I were on that board. Now, I want to talk briefly about what does it mean to be a woman in this male-dominated field in slightly a different way. Women bring different things to the table. Women have a different way of conflict resolution. Women have a different approach. They don't always see it having to be black and white, yes and no, winners and losers. They see things being, let's get to yes. Let's see how we can make things work. This comes from being a mother. It comes from running a family. It comes from my experience from being a teacher and my prior job as a research associate at UCSD. It comes to finding ways to find a path. This path may look good, but it won't work. You don't quit, you find a different path. There are many paths to any door. And so what I've discovered is I wish there were more women who would step up and run for office. It's not scary. I mean, it might be scary at first, but what you find out is it's a people business. That's what politics means. And women are, generally speaking, very good at a people business. That's why you find so many women on the front lines. They put women in the front because women are good at it. So why not take your skill sets and your strengths and move to the next level where you can really influence what happens to people and what you can do there. And it's amazing what you can do there. I never wanted to go beyond the county board, even though I had a great chance to go to the state and even to Congress. I didn't want to do it because what happens on the local level stays there, and you can see your constituents on a daily basis, and you know that you're having an effect on them. You're one of 5 and not one of 435. It makes a big difference. It is the most, I think, the best level of politics because it's not hyper-partisan. It's the issues and not the party that I think is important. And that is what we did at the County of San Diego. And I remember when I was supporting the candidate who's now here and now the county supervisor who replaced me, I strongly supported him against the other candidate because he was by far and away the best. I was speaking to a group of women and I said, in this case, the best woman for the job was a man. And so I do think that there's a message, and I think the message is, it isn't just being a woman that makes you good. And when you're surrounded by men, you need to be cordial and learn to work the path. If you can show them that by helping you, they help themselves, if by working together with you, you're going to reach a common goal, you'll find that the doors will open. I didn't really think of myself as a woman first. I thought of myself as someone who wanted to get something done. And to get something done, you have to get people to want to go along with you and to get things done with you. So I hope my comments have been helpful, but even more so, I hope other women decide this is the time in 2014 they're going to stand up and run for an office, because women, we need more women in office. Thank you.
That's right. I've always thought it's interesting when we talk to young girls and little ones and we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think from this conference, I think what we should tell ourselves is from now on, we should say to young girls, you can be anything you want to be. You don't have to ask them what they want to be necessarily, just give them that sense of anything is possible, and I think that's what this panel really shows. I don't think if you ask a 10-year-old little girl, do you want to run for city council? They probably wouldn't say, I don't know, I'm not sure. Elected office, I'm not sure if that's for me or not. But if we encourage them along the way, that's really what I think matters. So Leah, when you were a little girl, did you say, I want to fly fighter jets? Was that what you were thinking about?
No, I was really thinking about princesses and pink canopy beds and that type of thing more than anything else.
So I know you were a graduate of the Naval Academy. When did you make that decision? Tell us about that path and how it led you to where you are today.
Well, sure. Yeah, as Karen said, I'm a graduate of the Naval Academy. I come from a family that's very patriotic. Both my grandfathers served in the Navy. My father served in the Navy. So growing up, I was passionate about our country and wanting to serve. In my family, it really wasn't. The idea of women serving in the military wasn't very popular, which kind of was an immediate challenge for me growing up, and I'm somebody who's always been drawn to challenge. So my brother ended up going to the Naval Academy. I have a big brother named Brett. He's 2.5 years older than me. And he's really one of the greatest blessings in my life, because he's made my life so easy, because he's always kind of done things and then looked at me and said, well, you don't have to do it because you're a girl. Which always made me want to do whatever it was. So growing up with him, whether it was jumping off of a tree onto a dirt mound or skiing a double black diamond slope, when he'd look at me and say, well, you don't have to do it because you're a girl, that always kind of took me out of the I'm a girl and I'm younger than him, and instead maybe just want to be his buddy, made me want to rise to that challenge. So as I was graduating from high school and I was looking to where I was going to go to college, wanting to serve my country, but also wanting to be challenged is what drew me to the Naval Academy. And while I was at the Academy, I was kind of, at first, I think I kind of woke up one day and went, wow, I'm actually in the Navy. This isn't just about, looking cute in uniform and running in formation, left, right, left. I'm actually in the Navy. I better figure out what the heck I'm going to do. And it was the end of my first year at the Naval Academy when the Blue Angels, which is the Navy's flight demonstration team, came and flew, and I was watching them, and I'm just sitting there in awe of these airplanes, and they flew F-18s, which I'm a little bit, prejudiced, but I believe that it's the sexiest and baddest airplane in the U.S. military. And I thought that then too, and I remember watching and just thinking, gosh, who gets to do that? And that's when being a baby sister really kind of came into play, because I had this paradigm shift where I looked at it and said, wait a second, there's absolutely no reason why I can't do that. Why am I counting myself out? And I think counting ourselves out is something that a lot of us do. And I think that when you're looking at something and you're dreaming about it, that's really the time when you need to stop and say, you know what, I just wrote my next goal. And that's something that's really played in throughout my life, making those dreams a goal and looking at the people who are doing them and saying, they're no different from me. Whatever it is he can do, I can do, and probably better. So I went on to fly F-18s in the Navy, and then from there I decided that I wanted to really develop myself into a journalist, because I became passionate about journalism as I was seeing the wars reported on, and a lot of people who were reporting on the military had never had any experience in it. And so I really felt that there should be more people who would walked in my boots, in my combat boots, who had lived the experience to be telling the news and expressing those stories to our audiences. So as I decided to kind of transform myself, I started focusing on military intelligence and was able to transition and become an intelligence officer doing human intelligence. That's when I deployed with the Navy SEAL team in Afghanistan, a very male-dominated environment, even more so than the F-18 community. And then from there, when I got out of the Navy, everyone told me, well, you want to be a journalist? People in the military thought, well, that's a great idea, no problem. But the people out of the military in the real world said, well, do you have a journalism degree? No. Okay, so how are you going to accomplish this? And so for me, as we've kind of talked about, not taking no for an answer, I just had to develop my own path. I had to look at what my skill sets were that would make me great as a journalist. The intelligence community really helped me with that. And then just being able to use my experience and find my way into a market that would make sense. Here in San Diego, one of the largest military communities in the U.S., made sense, so I didn't have to work my way market to market through very small markets up to a large market. And so it's been a very wonderful experience for me coming here to San Diego and transitioning to journalism, but it hasn't been easy. And I think the greatest thing that I've learned that I can really give credit to my big brother for is whenever you see something that you want to do, look at it, figure out a way to do it. There's always a way, and most likely it's not the way that everyone else is taking. So when you're dreaming, take note of that and make that your next goal.
That's right, Lan. So I'm interested to know from this group whether or not you think there's such a thing as a boys' club. Because the reality is, if you look around this room, we all know that some of the best mentors we probably have ever had have been men. Because they're in positions of power, and if women ascend to leadership roles, the likelihood is somewhere along the way, some man took the time to mentor a young woman in her career. We as women mentor other women. I don't think that we in any way discriminate. We mentor men, we mentor women, we lead. That's what we do. But I'm interested to know from your perspective, do you think there's such thing as a boys' club? So how do we break through that? Judy, do you think that that's still true?
I don't allow myself to really acknowledge, well, maybe I do acknowledge that it is true in some cases, in some areas, but the way I approach my life and my decisions and the things that are on my plate, I just focus on what I bring to the table, my dreams, and I just approach it from that point of view, because I feel if you dwell on the male dominance or the boys' club, that's a negative, and I feel that that negative needs to be turned into a positive so that you can feel empowered to do your role and apply your skills to that particular situation.
Yeah, I think it's true. So Cynthia, do you there aren't that many women in corporate America in high leadership positions. We hear about this a lot on boards, that there aren't as many women as there could be or should be. But it has to start somewhere. It starts, I think, with a pipeline. So what does your company do in terms of the pipeline of having women really sort of coming up through the ranks?
That's a really good question. And I think across corporate America, but most especially I think in aerospace and defense, there's an obvious awareness around the fact that there aren't a lot of Leahs. And so you don't have a pipeline of people who have strapped themselves into the cockpit of an aircraft, who really understand what it's like to land in an aircraft carrier and understand from a user perspective what the lift worth the drag means. And I think for my company, one of the things that we've seen is opportunities for women to really be given the chance to lead. And the way that they're given a chance to lead is by developing really good programs that give them an opportunity not only to network with other women and network with men who are leaders, but also a way to really have what they bring to the table as leaders at any level in their life to the workplace. We have a program in particular called Women in Leadership that's largely started out as an engineering program, really looking at ways to bring women into positions out of science, technology, engineering, and math, and put that diversity into a leading role at our company. And now it's been expanded to cover all aspects of our corporate organization, from global supply chain to production and manufacturing, from engineering to even communications. So we're seeing that it's an opportunity for men and women to mentor women and give them that confidence they need to do what they want to do. And often it's our confidence that gets in the way of our success. So that's one of the ways in which our company in particular in our industry is really pushing to get women in leadership.
I think just talking about it really elevates the dialogue. It gets people thinking in ways they might not have thought about it earlier. So communication, Leah, you're in communications. That's what you do day in and day out. I'm interested in knowing your experience in the military, but also now, how do you think men and women communicate differently? And what have you done as a woman in terms of making sure your message is heard?
Well, first, I just want to address the Old Boys Club. I'm sorry. I have to make a comment about this because if any of you have seen Top Gun and you remember the scene with Iceman and Maverick in the locker room, that was my life in the military. Not the volleyball scenes, where all the good-looking guys are playing, but it really was a male locker room, and there really was a boys club. And I just want to share that when I started out as a pilot, I really tried to be one of the guys, and that did not work for me. I tried to talk like them, I tried to walk like them, I tried to act like them, and I was not accepted. What I learned to do is to embrace my femininity and to embrace the fact that we're different. There's this kind of certain chemistry, I think, between men and women that is fun and can be playful, and that just works. And so for me, in my experience in the military, I think just embracing the differences and embracing the fact that boys are different from girls really helped me to survive and to thrive in that environment. And then on communications, we do communicate differently. And one of the things that I've learned, and I learned this more as an intelligence officer before I got into broadcasting, and that's that it's really important to pay attention to how other people communicate. So when I get into a new environment, a new group setting, I try to pay attention to the other people and how they communicate, because they're going to communicate best with you in the way they communicate. So if you can almost mimic it, that really works. And I think as women, sometimes we want to over-communicate. So I try to, especially in a mostly male setting, I try to be quiet at first and just listen and really try to understand the other people first. And once they feel that you understand them, they're almost always willing to understand you.
I think it's true. In my profession in law, it's male dominated, and there are different communication styles. The one thing I have found that people sort of cringe when women start to talk about their feelings. Usually that's probably, in the workplace, that's where people get a little bit uncomfortable. But I think that the styles are very different. And actually, just what you said, Leah, the idea that if we try to be one of the guys, in the end, it kind of backfires. You got to be yourself at the end of the day. So we're a little over on time, but I want to end by talking about one thing. I think we'll just do a speed round with our panelists. And that is, we've got this wonderful group of women out here, and they have all kinds of diverse interests, and they're in different places in their lives. So I'm interested to know, looking back on your life, what advice would you have been giving yourself to get you here today? What would be the one thing, Judy, looking back 10, 15 years ago, that you would wish someone would have told you?
I tried to incorporate that in my opening remarks. I think that taking care of your responsibilities today, whatever is on your plate today, do that with utmost excellence. And that way, your tomorrow will take care of yourself. Just don't be overwhelmed by what you want in the world. Just focus on today. Work hard. Work hard.
Carpe diem, definitely. So, Cynthia, what about you? What advice would you, if you had been someone coming up through the ranks, what advice would you give?
It's work hard, say yes, always approach things with a positive attitude. Don't ever let anybody believe any of the doubts that you may have about yourself. And always, love what you do until you can do what you love. It's very simple. Because if you're not liking what you're doing right now, that's just wasted time. Learn to love it, and then you'll eventually get where you love what you do.
I'm going to call on Leah now so that Pam gets to back clean up here. So, Leah, what would your advice be, especially to young girls who are thinking about a career in the military?
I'd say don't play by the rules. We tend to go the path that people tell us must be traveled. And I think when you want to do something, especially as Wilma was saying, when somebody tells you no, that's when you should take it as a personal challenge and look at it and go, what's the backdoor approach? How else can I get in? If I can't get in this way, what's the other path that I can take? Be really creative with what your talents are and use those talents to drive your own path and to get in the door in any way that you can for whatever your goal is.
And Pam, last words to you.
Is it on? Okay. My last words would be never, ever close a door. Never, ever assume something is too ridiculous or not something that you would want to do. Because every career I've had 3 main careers. Each one of them was not something I thought I'd want to do. And yet I ended up loving each one of them. for the time that I served in those capacities. So be open to new challenges that come in your life. If you find something's not a fit, don't stay there too long. Move on and find something else that is. A lot of people spend way too much time in a job they don't like and look forward to getting out. Why do it that way? Why not leave that one and find something you like?
So to each one of you, here's to your path ahead and to many success.